That was Vice President and Second Gentleman on the second anniversary of the Supreme Court ending Roe versus Wade with its Dobbs decision ending abortion rights nationwide. They marked it with a searing takedown of Donald Trump, highlighting the threat they say he poses to American freedoms. In his own words, we should note the former president is pledging to enact the largest deportation program in American history, reinstate his controversial Muslim travel ban, detain millions of migrants from federal detention camps, deploy federal troops, in some cases to Democratic-run cities for protests, prosecute political opponents, and replace career civil servants with hardline loyalists. Meanwhile, conservative groups aligned with Trump are drawing up their own plans for a second Trump term. It's something called Project 2025. It's not received nearly as much attention as Trump's plans for a second term, but they should. Let's discuss with New York Times reporter Charlie Savage. Charlie, thanks so much for being with us. Let's talk about Project 2025. It hasn't gotten a lot of attention. You hear progressives talking about it and saying, hey, this is coming. What have you reported on in terms of what this is all about?
Well, Project 2025 is an effort by a consortium of conservative think tanks, which are aligned for the most part with former President Trump, under the umbrella oversight of the Heritage Foundation. That's the biggest one of them. And its effort is to draw up detailed policy plans and personnel lists to staff the next and run the next conservative presidency. It began before Trump had won the primary, and it's not a part of the Trump campaign. Had Ron DeSantis emerged as the Republican nominee, they, I think, would have been just as happy to hand their plans off to him. And the Trump campaign, of course, is not the same thing as Project 2025, as your intro said. So we have to stress here that there's a lot of overlap in worldview, but the Trump campaign says only the things that Trump or the campaign itself have endorsed are what he intends to do. So you have to look at Project 2025 as aspiration to help run the Trump administration if there is a second one that may or may not succeed in each case.
Yeah, I mean, one area of overlap, Charlie, is that both Trump, his allies, and the folks who are behind Project 2025 are talking about something you just mentioned a few moments ago, which is sort of going in and trying to root out what they claim to be members of the deep state inside the federal government. They want to stock the federal bureaucracy with loyalists. And some of this was going on towards the end of the first Trump administration. I mean, it probably happened a lot during the entire Trump administration, but there seemed to be more of an effort towards the end of the first Trump administration. What can you tell us about that?
What you're talking about is what's usually referred to as Schedule F. The way the government works is there's a large amount of people who are just career civil servant employees, technical experts in whatever it is they do. They stay on regardless of who is in office. And then above them, supervising them, is a much smaller number of political appointees that the president appoints and who essentially resign when there's a new president coming in. And at the end of the Trump administration, Trump issued an executive order called Schedule F that would have removed special protections against firing career civil servants, essentially turned them into at-will employees who could be dismissed for any reason, even if they committed no misconduct, and would make it easier to then replace them, as many as 50,000 of them, with people who are loyal to Trump's agenda. So this was a major challenge to the whole idea of a civil service system and not having the government be political spoils where jobs go to whoever supported whoever happened to win the election deep into the ranks of the government. It never happened because President Biden came in and canceled it right after he took office. And so the civil service system remains as it was. But Trump has said, and the Project 2025 people certainly agree with him, that one of the first things he would do if he comes back into power is reimpose Schedule F and turn large numbers, tens of thousands of career civil servants into people who could be fired at will and replaced with partisan loyalists.
Right. I mean, if you listen to a lot of the Trump people, what they will say, one of their regrets about the first Trump administration is that they thought there were too many federal bureaucrats standing in the way. Charlie, I want to ask you, Project 2025 also is proposing, and straighten us out here if we got this a little bit off base, to eliminate a long list of terms from all laws and federal regulations, including sexual orientation, diversity, equity, and inclusion, gender equality, abortion, reproductive rights. I mean, this seems to have come right out of the culture wars, and I mean, it's obviously something that a lot of these groups behind Project 2025 have been after for many years now here in Washington.
There's definitely so what Project 2025 has done so far is they produced a 1,000-page book that sort of lays out policy ideas and philosophy. They've come up with a large database of people who have been vetted for potential positions to staff out the next Republican administration, if there is one. And they are currently working on what they call the fourth pillar, which is executive orders and other things, specific concrete steps, policies that could be signed in the first 180 days of a second Trump administration. And so we haven't seen that those policy orders yet, but just from the 1,000-page book, we know that one of the things they're very interested in doing is eliminating, as you just laid out, both in the executive branch, which could be done unilaterally, and in some cases stuff that would require legislation, which of course is much harder to get through in Washington. Things that they view as liberal in the culture wars, including diversity, equity, inclusion programs, and other things that suggest a different worldview about rights.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine if Trump comes into office and they try to put this Project 2025 into action, there's going to be an army of lawyers, two armies of lawyers on both sides fighting it out over all of this, right?
Well, one of the things that we at the New York Times have been writing about is we've been exploring Trump's plans, and we've tried to focus specifically more on what Trump has said and the campaign has said rather than what Project 2025 has said. But yeah, I agree with you that it's important too. But there is also already a burgeoning set of plans by the people the groups and the centrists and liberals who resisted the first Trump administration. They were caught off guard in 2016 when he won, just as Trump himself was caught off guard and didn't really have a lot of these kind of plans in place and personnel lists in place because he didn't think he was going to win the election, and neither did they. And so there was a lot of chaos in 2017, both in terms of the government trying to run, the executive branch trying to run itself as the Trump administration kind of staggered to a start. That's what Project 2025 is aimed at preventing next time, having it be, trying to achieve their policy goals in a smooth way from day one. But also the centrist and liberal groups like the ACLU, like immigration rights groups, like abortion rights groups, are laying in place plans to try to resist a second Trump administration should he win the election. They are drafting lawsuits, identifying potential plaintiffs. Blue states that are run by Democratic governors and attorneys general are stockpiling abortion pills in case it becomes harder to acquire them over the next 4 years. So there's both sides are really gearing up to do this all over again, but having learned a lot from last time.